Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second Remento webinar. My name is Charlie Greene, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Remento. And on behalf of our entire team, I want to express my deepest gratitude for all of you joining us today. We've got a really exciting agenda in store for all of you. We're going to start out with sharing a bit of the context about why we set out to create Remento in the first place. This content will be similar to what we talked about during our last webinar. So if you joined last time, this will be a reminder for you. Then we're going to do a deep dive into how the product actually works, from selecting prompts to recording stories to ultimately preparing your book for printing. Then we are incredibly fortunate to have the world-renowned neuroscientist Paul Zak with us today to help break down the science behind storytelling. And then we have a surprise product announcement that our team is incredibly excited to announce. And then finally, we'll reserve space for a Q&A, which will be an opportunity for each of you to submit questions. And speaking of those questions, right before our Q&A begins, we'll open up our chat and give you a chance to start adding your questions into the chat, which will appear on the side of your screen. So with some of the administrative business out of the way, I'd like to transition to an overview of the why behind Remento. Each of us on Team Remento has different reasons for caring about the preservation of family stories. And for me personally, my own passion for the space stems directly from personal experience. It was 9 years after my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was 9 years ago that my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer. And after hearing about that diagnosis, I remember being just absolutely terrified that she may never have the chance to meet her grandchildren. And having lost my dad a few days after my 10th birthday, I knew personally from firsthand experience how painful it was to one day wake up without someone you love. And also how much it would have been worthwhile and valuable to have access to his voice just one more time. And so right before she started her chemotherapy, we sat down to record a series of her best stories. We were in effect creating a legacy of her life, a time capsule, which would be designed to introduce her to her grandchildren who we feared she wouldn't have the chance to meet. And frankly, what I thought I'd capture in those recordings were the stories that I'd grown up hearing all my life. But what really blew me away was just how much I learned for the very first time, from moments in her career to things that she had never talked about related to getting to know my dad. And as I reflected on those conversations, I couldn't help but think to myself, why on earth had it taken a cancer diagnosis for me to really get to know my mom? And that's why, with multiple cameras in my pocket, I had never actually made the time to learn these stories and document them. And it was, frankly, reflecting on that experience that the vision for Remento was born, which is to help families preserve and protect the stories of their family by making it delightfully easy to document the memories that have made us who each of us are today. Now, as many of you know, our flagship product is our Remento books, which we refer to as our no-write memoirs. And that's because the final product is a hardcover, color-printed keepsake book of life stories created without having to write a single word. So I'd love to transition now over to a deeper dive into how Remento actually works. So for those of you who have been using Remento extensively, this is going to be a review for you. And for those considering Remento in your own family, I hope that what this makes clear is that we're really doing our best to make the journey of preserving legacy as simple and straightforward as possible. So to get us started, we'll begin on the Remento website. All you have to do is go to remento.co or just Google the phrase Remento. And then on this screen, you can see I'm going to press login in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. That's going to invite me to sign into my fully private Remento account. Now, for many things you log into, you'll need a unique password, but at Remento, we don't actually use passwords, but instead rely on your security of your email to protect your account. So once you type in your email address, in Remento, we'll actually email you a link. And when you click on that link in your email, you'll be logged directly into your private Remento website. And that's where I've landed here. So now it's worth noting that the experience I'm walking you through right now is on a computer, but you can also do this from any device, whether that's a laptop or iPad or smartphone. So right now I'm looking at the prompts page, and that's because I'm a host for my mom, Claudette, who I purchased Remento for. And that means I have the opportunity to customize her experience by selecting prompts she'll respond to over the course of the year that she has access to Remento. So step number one is to pick what I want to learn about. And I'm going to press add prompts. And I see that I'm presented with three different options. The first is to upload a photograph, meaning my mom will be asked to reflect on an image, whether that's a photograph of her childhood or a picture of a family trip or a photo of a family heirloom. The second option is to select a question from our question bank. And the last is to create a poll among friends and family to learn exactly what others want to hear your storyteller talk about. I'm going to go ahead and press add a question, which is going to bring me to the Remento question bank. Now, at Remento, we've teamed up with professional storytellers and memory scientists to develop these questions designed specifically to stimulate the recall of unique, specific, and often overlooked memories. So I'll begin by clicking on the childhood category, and you can see that Remento makes it really easy for me to pick and choose which questions I want to add. Now, in this case, I'm picking these questions from my mom, but if I had bought Remento to document my own stories, the process would be the exact same. So once I'm satisfied with that selection, I can select next, and I see that those questions are now added to my mom's queue. That means the first prompt in the list will be sent to her on this coming Wednesday, and the next prompt is going to be sent to her on the following Wednesday. Now I'll go back in and add a photograph. I can click on add prompts again, and then select the upload a photograph option. On this page, I can see that there are actually a few different ways to add a photo. I can add a photo from Facebook. I can add a photo from Instagram. Photos can be added via direct connection through either Google Drive or Dropbox, or I can manually add a photo to upload. So I'm going to go ahead and manually add a photo that I have on my desktop. This is a photograph of my parents from their wedding day. Unlike my wife and I think we have a couple thousand photos from our wedding day. This is one of 6 that we have from my mom and dad on that day. And if I wanted to move my mom to receive, I wanted my mom to receive that photo at the beginning of her experience rather than at the end, I can click on the photo and drag it to the top of the queue. Now, at the moment, we only allow one photo to be uploaded per prompt, but our team is actively working on an update that's going to allow multiple photos to be added per prompt in the future. Also, we default to one prompt sent every week, but you can change this setting to be more frequent and on whatever days you like. Now, my sister actually has a ton of photos of my mom's childhood, so I'm going to invite her to add some of those photos to my mom's queue as well. To that end, all I have to do is navigate to the invite button at the top of the screen, and then I can add her email address and press invite. That will make her a collaborator on my mom's project, which means she can pick prompts and is going to be notified every time my mom creates a new story. Now, speaking of new stories, I want to bring you over to what my mom will experience as a storyteller, which is the same whether she had received Remento as a gift or if she had purchased it herself. You can see in the screen, we're looking at her iPhone, and she's just received a new message from Remento that it's time to record a new story. For the record, my mom is signed up for both SMS messages and also emails, so she'll receive a notification when it's time to record via both text message as well as email. Now, when she clicks on that notification and then clicks on the message itself, you can see that she's brought directly into the Remento recording studio. Now, you notice that she's greeted by name without any logins or downloads or passwords, and that's because the recording experience is accessed via the secure link that she was sent, meaning she can start her own private recording in just a couple of taps. And this experience can be done on any device whatsoever, whether it's a smartphone or tablet or a laptop. She can press continue, and you'll see that the photo that I uploaded from my desktop is on her screen, along with the request to tell Remento if she wants to record video or audio only. Now, one of the things we hear all the time from storytellers is how they don't want to be recorded on video, whether it's a bad hair day or bad lighting. Everyone has a reason. And that's really a shame, because when we talk to families, they tell us how much they love watching the video recordings of their storytellers. So to all my storytellers on the call today, if you're willing to give video recording a shot, I know it's something that your family will really appreciate in the future. So my mom selects video and then sees that she's being asked to tell the story behind the photo and sees the big red button to start recording. Whenever she's ready, she can press the button, and after a dramatic 3-second countdown, she is recording. Now, she can record up to 30 minutes and then can press stop recording whenever she needs a break or is done. From here, she can watch the recording, decide she wants to retake the recording, or maybe decide that she's ready to submit it. In this case, she did a great job, as she always does, and she'll press submit. And that's it for that story. As a quick reminder, she can record as many stories as she wants within the year of her access to Remento. There is no limit whatsoever. Now, if she wants to, she does have two other options. First, she can record another story. She can catch up on prompts that she might have missed, respond to prompts that are trending on Remento, or even add her own prompts. Or second, she can view her stories, which will move her from the recording experience back to the website where the stories actually live. Now, let's bring it back to my world. Because she has submitted a recording, I, along with all of our collaborators, are going to receive an email letting us know that there's a new story to check out. You can see that Remento has automatically summarized the content of her recording and is inviting me to play the entire recording. Of course, I want to watch it, so I naturally click on the button and am brought back to my private Remento website. And here you have it. On the left side, you can see my mom speaking about this photo. And on the right side, you can see that Remento has taken her recording and then transcribed it word for word. You can see that the first sentence reads exactly the way the words came out of her mouth. And that's because when I set up Remento for my mom, I indicated that I wanted Remento to provide her words exactly as she said them. But that is not my only option. If I click on the star next to the Edit Story button on the bottom right, I can see that I have a few different options. Right now, you can see that the cleaned transcript option is selected by default, but I can change the story perspective to either the first person or the third person. If I select first person, that means Remento's speech-to-story technology is going to take her words and turn them into a polished story, written as if she was writing them herself. And you can see that I can also adjust the story length too. The other option is third person, which will also turn her words into a polished story, but will write it as if a biographer had been hired to write the text on her behalf. In that version, you'd expect to hear a sentence along the lines of Claudette remembers being thrilled on the day of her wedding, rather than I remember being thrilled on the day of my wedding. So I've gone ahead and selected first person. So I'm going to go ahead and have Remento automatically regenerate that story. And that's exactly what it has just done. Written in a polished format in the first person, resembling what it would sound like if my mom actually wrote the story herself. If I like what I see, I can tap Update Story and then confirm that I want to go ahead and replace what was there before with the new version. So I will go ahead and do that. And like that, you can see that the newly revised story has been changed. Now, importantly, many families want to make changes to the story as written, so we make it really easy to do that. You just tap Edit Story in the bottom right, and you can change the text in any way you'd like. So now my mom has shared a really beautiful story here. So if I want to let her know how much it means to me, I can simply click on the smiley face at the bottom of the screen, and doing so will allow me to send my mom a reaction message about the story she's just told, which will be emailed to her directly. I'll go ahead and send that message now. And like that, the message has been sent. So my mom is a really prolific storyteller and has been using Remento for a while. So if we close out of this page and head over to the story section of the private website, you can see that she's recorded dozens of stories. Some of them are from her childhood. Others are far more recent, like a photo of her dropping me off at college. And we've actually got a lot of images of family heirlooms as well that she's told the stories about. In her case, I uploaded most of these photos into the prompts for her, meaning that she was looking at them as she told the story, but photos can also be uploaded to the story after it's been recorded as well, which is a really nice way of bringing an existing story to life. Now, speaking of ways to bring stories to life, it's now time to go ahead and create our book. So I press Order Books on the left-hand side, and I can see that I'm brought to a screen where I can customize the cover of my mom's stories. On this page, I can add a photograph to the front cover. I can customize the text. I can also change the color of the book. On the next page, I can review all of the stories and change their order and organize them in any order I want, including chronologically. And then I can preview my book and pick a shipping address. Now, this is the flow if I'm ordering a book for myself, but if I wanted to order another copy of an existing book, I can click on the View Past Orders in the upper right-hand part of the screen and reorder a previous book to the same address or a different address if I prefer. And then within a few weeks, you'll be holding in your hands your very own Remento book, Our books are color printed. They feature double thick paper and they're 8 by 10 inches, designed to really make the stories and photos come to life. And you'll see that each chapter in the book also includes a QR code. And when you scan that code, you can see that it will play the recording that was used to write each of the stories. That way, no one in your family, whether it's in the next year or 100 years from now, will ever be without those stories or the voices behind each one. So that concludes our walkthrough of how our product works. As a reminder, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to our customer support team by email. That's at support@remento.co, and they'll be happy to answer any questions you have. So next, I am so excited to transition over to our fireside chat on the topic of the science of storytelling. And today we are so lucky to have probably the most qualified person in the world to speak on that subject. We have with us Dr. Paul Zak, who, as the founding director of the Center for Neuroeconomic Studies and as a professor at the Claremont Graduate University, has been an absolute pioneer in the field of all things related to neuroscience. And his groundbreaking work specifically on oxytocin, which has often been referred to as the moral molecule, has really transformed our understanding of how stories can literally change the chemistry of our brain and foster empathy. He is one of the most cited research scientists in the world and has an amazing new app that you should all check out called Six that uses a ton of neuroscience, as well as the Apple Watch or whatever you're wearing on your wrist, to be able to measure the 6 happiest moments of your day. But I have to say, on a personal note, what I love the most about Paul is how he's able to take really complex science and break it down for an everyday audience. And if you haven't watched one of his TED Talks that have been viewed by millions of people around the world, that would be a really good way to follow up this webinar today. Paul has been one of Remento's scientific advisors for several years now. And in that time, he's really shaped my understanding of the neuroscience behind storytelling and why stories matter so much within families. So with that, I am so delighted to welcome Dr. Paul Zak to our webinar. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, my friend Charlie. What a kind introduction. So this will be fun.
Well, we are so excited to have you here. In our first webinar, we got to speak with a couple of Remento storytellers and hosts, and we thought it would be fun to share a different perspective in this webinar from someone who is, by all accounts, an absolute expert in the field of the science behind storytelling. I think it's fair to say many of the folks on the call have experienced the magic at some point in their life of a great story. Stories can make information more entertaining. They can also help us retain information over a longer period of time. But your research indicates that there is actually an ability of a story to connect us to the people around us. So maybe to get started, I wonder if you could help us understand from a scientific perspective, what is actually happening when we share a story?
Yes, storytelling is such an interesting topic. We started out in my lab looking at persuasion. How do we communicate in a way that influences people's behavior? And having run lots of experiments, we showed that having a narrative arc is the most effective way to sustain the metabolic investment that we need to really connect to another person. So it's like, duh, English 101. Like, how did I not know this after doing years of research? When we see the data, we see that story structure, well, I introduce characters, I put them in a situation, and there's some tension in that story, helps sustain that investment, that metabolic investment the brain makes, and really leads to a greater understanding of the information being presented. In the Remento's case, it's of that other person, right? I do want to understand that other person, not just from a sort of cognitive or functional perspective. Where were you on this date? Why did you take this job? But what they care about. So as you know, stories that have authentic emotions are what really connect us to each other. And neurologically, that's what we see. When we have stories that people reveal themselves emotionally, they're the most powerful stories.
Stories that reveal themselves are the most stories that reveal themselves emotionally are the most powerful stories. For those in the audience who are thinking to themselves, maybe I'm not a storyteller, by trade. I wouldn't consider myself to be an excellent storyteller. Maybe you can break down from a scientific perspective. How do you tell a good story, and specifically, how do you start a good story?
That's a great question. It is one of the ultimate questions, right? I mean, movies, TV, books, we're always thinking about how to start that. And what we found in the data is that because the brain has this strong tendency just to kind of idle, you got to open hot. So, in journalism, they call this not burying the lead,
Hmm.
right? So you have a photograph in Remento, and if you're going to tell a story chronologically, that oftentimes takes a long time to get to the kind of high point. So, picture of grandma and grandpa at the shore somewhere, and go, instead of saying, well, this is on a honeymoon, we got married, you could say, your grandpa and I almost died on this beach. Okay, oh, holy, okay, that's a hot open. What the heck? And then go back and start to fill in those details. Well, we're on this beach in Marseille because we're on our honeymoon in 1941, and we were not aware that there was a war going on. And so we walked on the beach, and there was this piece of metal, and your grandfather started picking it up. Okay, I'm making up a story now, but you can see how opening hot is really valuable. So think about the value from a storyteller perspective, the value you're creating for those listeners. And I want to get to that value as quick as possible and then backfill with the details. So start with the hottest, most important thing first. As I said, the genuine emotions are going to be easier when you have that hot open.
Hmm. It strikes me that in the story that you just either referenced from your own life or maybe made up off the spot, there were details in there. Marseille on a beach with another person. Can you talk to the importance of including details in stories, both as it relates to making stories more entertaining, as well as maybe making the journey for the person that you're with one that they can more deeply connect with?
Right. So there's this old saying in writing, to show, don't tell. So we're telling a story, but I want to allow that listener or that reader to fill in the details. And he or she will do that if there are enough details to be filled in. So we're on a beach in Marseille. So now I have maybe I've never been to Marseille, but I have a picture postcard view of what that looks like. The beaches in France are rocky. There's a wall. And so we're standing on the other side of this wall, and we start walking down towards the beach. Our feet hurt because it's like a weird rocky beach. It doesn't have sand. And we weren't supposed to be there because our hotel said stay off the beach, but we didn't listen to them because we were 22 and we were dumb. But now I'm filling in those stories. So I want to create a picture in that person's mind. Having said that, too much detail means the story doesn't move along. So you have to sort of modulate that. But yeah, the details are really important. And the details are, again, those emotional hooks. So for my fake story, we're walking on the beach, our feet hurt. Okay, that's an emotional response, right? Like, oh yeah, I can imagine walking on a rocky beach and my feet hurt. And then I see this weird piece of metal and I want to dig it out. And so this whole story that I'm telling, I'm putting pictures in people's brains. So I don't want to go through every detail because I don't allow that listener or viewer to fill in the details and create his or her own mental picture of what's happening.
When we think about putting details into someone's brain, can you explain what's happening from a neuroscience perspective, and maybe also speak to the degree to which story can take two people who have not shared a common event, but by way of communicating about that experience, actually bring them closer together? Again, from the neuroscience perspective, which you are such an expert on.
Yeah. So an effective story, and effective means I remember it, I can share it with other people, I remember the details. So lots of measures of what an effective story does two primary things in the brain. And again, I've measured over 50,000 of these stories, so I think I have some expertise. The first is you've got to pay attention, right? So if I'm looking over here, Charlie, and I'm not looking at you, we're not going to have a great conversation, right? So the first thing is I've got to capture that attention in my story, hence open hot. But then you actually have to get me to emotionally engage with that story. I've got to have emotional resonance. So attention associated with the action of a neurotransmitter called dopamine, and then emotional resonance, that's where the authentic emotions comes in, has to do with the action of another neurotransmitter called oxytocin. So oxytocin and dopamine interact with each other in kind of complex ways, sort of reinforce each other. So that's why we get into a story. So should we do our confession, Charlie, publicly now? Charlie and I are both terrible movie criers. Terrible. Don't go to a movie with us. Don't even go on an airplane with us. Why is that? So think of
Especially a movie on an airplane. That would be the
exactly,
word.
it's double trouble. Yeah. So why would we do that? Why would people cry at movies? Because we've been transported into that world. So if you think of that, what's been called narrative transportation, I want to transport you into this world. And I do that most effectively by creating some tension in the story. That's the attentional part requires tension, but I've got to get you to have this authentic emotional response. So if you're telling a story and you're not revealing the emotions that you felt in that experience, it becomes very flat, right? We went to Marseille, we were on our honeymoon, we stayed there for 4 days, we walked around, we got pretty tired, we went home. Well,
Mm,
that's not much of a story. But again, if I think of that hot open as the hook, as the spine of that entire story, I can build all around that. This is an unexploded German shell on this beach in Marseille, and we had no idea because we're in the U.S. and Pearl Harbor hadn't happened yet, and yeah, we're just playing with this piece of metal. We don't know what it is until this old guy comes out, starts yelling at us in French, which we don't speak, and he's just yelling at us, and we finally just got tired of being yelled at. So I'm getting emotional responses, right? I'm getting energy,
mm,
and even the way I'm telling it. So we have shown recently, as you know, Charlie, that this mechanism that values social emotional experiences like stories, this network in the brain I've called immersion. Maybe even written a book about this behind your head, which is very nice of you to put my books up, right? um, this valuation network in the brain is more active when I share a story and we begin to share emotional states, right? That's why
mm,
Charlie and I cry at movies, because we're sharing the emotions of the characters, even if they're not, true characters. So I think the great thing about Remento stories is these are authentically true stories that someone lived. So for the storytellers, you can be emotional. It's okay, right? You want to have um, that revelation of what you were going through. If it's a story you want to tell, something happened emotionally that makes it important to you. So feel free to share that when you're recording your story.
mm. I wonder for the person who's listening to this conversation, perhaps it's a storyteller who's thinking to themselves, there have been so many moments in my life that feel relevant to the life I've lived, but I'm not sure which stories might be the ones that connect most with the people that might be enjoying them, either through a physical book or through something that's recorded. How would you recommend they kind of like think through their life and try to identify the ones that may actually lead to the type of connection that, from a both, it sounds like, oxytocin and dopamine perspective, would create the most close connection with their families?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier pictures, and it's such a great prompt. It's one of the really wonderful things about the company you built, Charlie. Um, if you took, particularly if these stories are 20 years old or older, photos were less common back then. Now we're taking photos all the time, as you said. But if you have a photograph of that, it probably was an important issue, right? So
Mm,
use that photograph as a prompt. It'll help you fill in some of those details because you have other people, you have a setting. And so if it was captured in a photo 20 years ago or longer, it's probably important. And so use that prompt. And I'd say you don't have to choose the best. Just do one. See what feels. I'm going to
mm,
tell one story. I don't know. Maybe no one likes it. Maybe people do like it. If you can do one, then you can do two and you could do three. And you can share, right? You, Charlie, you can share one with your family. Say, hey, I just did one story. What do you guys think?
mm,
I would bet 95% of the time they're going to go, holy moly, we never knew this about mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle. Um, you're kind of building a family tree with these stories, and it's not the family tree that has genetics. It's a family tree of connection and emotion.
mm. Well, I think it's a really important point that the stories that are worth capturing are not always the stories that are the most or the best or the worst or the most difficult, right? No one is going to be grading and looking back and asking the question, why did you talk about this versus not talking about this? And Paul, what I think you shared that was really wise is that a great story actually has very little to do with what happened. It's the way it's communicated with the audience. It's got to be specific and have details and start with a great hook. So I think for our storytellers who think to themselves, how on earth would I identify the 5 or 10 or 50 or 100 stories that would comprise the stories from my life? It's actually maybe less about which experiences you're picking and more about the way that you share about how those experiences shaped you.
And you can ask your friends and family, right? So over Christmas, I did something with my young adult children, which wasn't ask me anything. You're old
Mm,
enough. Uh, would you guys be interested in that? They were not only interested, they wrote down notes and we booked a time in and we, went over like they had so many questions, which I had no idea. I thought, I don't care about what happened to me for 5 years living in Philadelphia in graduate school, you know, getting not arrested, but getting in fights, getting in, police stations and, all kinds of crazy stuff, crime. I was involved in so many things. And they were super interested in that. I didn't know. I just figured, I'm done with it. I'm not thinking about it. So, you can ask your friends and family, what would you like to know about?
yeah. Yeah. One of the as we saw in the product demo a couple minutes ago, one of the things that we offer storytellers the ability to do is make a decision between recording their stories with audio or audio plus video. And I'm curious, as you think about the ability for a story to create connection as it's communicated, but then also to be able to, through the medium of either audio or video alone, like keep the opportunity for connection to endure. Like, do you have any perspectives on between audio versus video plus audio, which you think would be more likely to facilitate kind of all of the wonderful benefits of connection that come from sharing a story?
Yeah, we've actually tested this pretty extensively. And so if it's emotion that keeps us connected to that story and therefore connected to that person telling the story, again, whether it's live or recorded, the more I can share that emotion, the more valuable that story will be to the person who's consuming it. So if I'm doing audio, I'm getting prosody, I'm getting changes in my voice, right? I'm getting emphases, I'm getting changes in volume. But we find actually that video, I get much more bandwidth hitting the brain, right? You're getting my facial expressions, you're getting my hand movements, right? All the stuff that adds in that extra little zest to the story. So if you're comfortable doing video, it's actually going to be easier for the people to understand the story because they're going to see your mouth move, they're going to see your excitement. You can get it in audio, it's just not as good, and it in text doesn't work quite as well. You have to be really a great writer to generate that emotional response in text.
Yeah. And I'm sure we have amazing writers on the call, but I think one of the things that we've heard from our customers that's really powerful is the combination of writing for when sitting down and reading a story feels right, but being able to have the option to actually hear someone's voice and see their reflection for themselves, both in the year ahead, but in the potentially many years ahead, is something that families really value. Um, we hear from some of our customers who receive Remento as a gift who question why they were given Remento because they don't feel like their life has been interesting enough to have a book written about them. I have very strong thoughts on the matter there, but Paul, I wonder if you have thoughts and what you would tell someone who might share that reservation with you.
In my first book, The More Molecule in 2012, one of the things I did for that is I spent a week doing hospice rounds with a friend of
Mm,
mine who's a palliative care doctor. And I learned so much about life from that. But the question that this physician would always ask his patients is on their first visit is, what will people remember you for? What
mm,
legacy do you think you're going to leave? So I think that's a great way to start, particularly for people who are older. What are going to people remember about you? That you were happy, that you loved gardening, that you built a business, that you got married 19 times, that you like, what's the kind of weird thing about you that's you're going to remember? So again, I'm thinking about those story hooks. We can just start there. Yeah. So people will know that I was a good provider to my family, but in my spare time, I loved woodworking. And I made the most
mm,
beautiful cabinets for all of my children and grandchildren. And actually, all my neighbors, okay, well, tell me about that. Like, why woodworking? Why is that fun for you? How did you learn that? Right. If you have that one little legacy idea, then you can build an entire story. Well, I learned woodworking from my grandfather. Well, where was that? Right. You can see that it just generates its own kind of
mm.
prompts. So think of that sort of legacy question. I think it's an easy place to start.
Yeah. And maybe thinking through with photos like specific moments and using the process of sharing reflections about these moments to lead you towards those kind of larger themes. I think some people maybe perhaps get intimidated by the idea of having to answer very specifically what their legacy is. And I think for some people it's really clear, and for others it's helpful to just begin the process of sharing and use the process of sharing as a way of helping them identify what are those themes and values that may come to exist from their perspective as worthy of remembering most specifically.
I think they're all worthy of remembering. And even you sort of asked this earlier, but I didn't answer it. The process of telling that story also produces these same kind of responses, particularly the release of oxytocin, which reduces blood pressure, improves the immune system, helps you sleep better. So that social connection, even if it's asynchronous, even if it's long distance, still has the same effects. Just like why we cry at movies is because we have this emotional response. We can generate it internally and gain all those benefits. So there's a real health benefit to actually telling your own story, whether you use Remento or you're on, FaceTime. So, I think
Mhm.
just elevating the importance of story for human connection, for people who live alone, for people who don't see each other enough. It's a real way a great way to combat loneliness and gain the benefits of
Mm.
social connection.
We know we live in a society with a loneliness epidemic. We know that people struggle with things like dementia and Alzheimer's. We know that storytelling and being reflective in your experiences of your life can do a lot of positive towards slowing the progression of disease as well as reducing the feelings of isolation and loneliness. So it's a great point.
And every person matters, right? Every single human being matters, and everyone has a story to tell that others are really interested in hearing. So don't think your story, whoever's listening, don't think your story is not important. It's unique to you. No one's had that story before, and no one will have it again. That's weird and interesting. And as social creatures, we're not stopping going to movies. We're not watching Netflix. We're not stopping to read novels. We haven't run out of storytelling opportunities because we love stories. That's how we learn about and connect to each other. And so there's a real need to get those stories and save them. So that's why
Mm.
I just love what you're doing, Charlie, as you know.
I promise this is not why I brought Dr. Zach onto our webinar
I'm a
today.
fan. I'm a huge fan of yours. You know that.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about the flip side, and I think we have time for about two more questions. But
Yeah.
you've just explained really clearly the benefits for the storyteller from a reducing isolation, from being able to decelerate the progression of disease and illness. What about for the families? Are there scientific benefits to both learning parts about your history as well as potentially knowing that you have access to those in the future?
Yeah, again, we see those same kind of shared benefits, right? Improved sense of connection. Families are complicated, right? We know each other so well that we know how to push each other's buttons, and there's friction. There's always friction with humans. But if I understand where you're coming from, we see this in the scientific literature, it's easier for me to overlook those friction points and understand you as a beautiful, complicated, sometimes pain in the ass human being and get those understandings. So can I give you just a concrete example?
Yeah.
I had a mother-in-law who was being demented. She was just an angry person. And it was really hard to be around her, even before she was fully demented. She was just one of those angry people. And then, again, because I'm just so stupid, I have to do research. I'm like, oh, she's got a brain problem, right? She always wasn't an angry person. She was a very happy person. She was widowed. She had lots of problems. And she has a brain dysfunction. And so she is not less valuable than anybody else. She's difficult to be around, but her brain's not working properly. So I think if we think about individuals in our families who can be difficult, who we've had friction with, um, their brains are working differently than our brains. They're not trying to be difficult. They're just trying to get through life like everybody else and try to be a little happy. So when we hear their stories, we understand the origins, what they've been through. No one gets through life without scars, right, Charlie?
Mm.
So if we share some of those traumas that we've been through, I think we gain this understanding of
Mm.
this is not a bad person. This is not a person who's mean to me. This is a person who's just struggling like everybody struggles. And if I can share my struggles with somebody, I have this deeper understanding. The beautiful thing about getting older too is after a while you just don't care. Like with my, kids in their 20s, I'm like, honestly, I'll ask you any question at this point. I mean, maybe one question or two I might just pass on, but anything, I mean, you're aware of the world. So just ask away. And it was such a wonderful experience to do that as with a group. I mean, do it together,
Mm.
right? It was something, again, this sort of powerful contagion effect of those emotional states. And so for people using Remento or just telling stories in general, right? Think about sharing those with a family occasion. How about having that Remento book come as a Christmas gift, and then the whole family's there and gets to hear and view and
Mm.
read your story? The impact is multiplied when we do it together. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I just think we have to have these stories and to capture them and save them because everyone is not going to be around. I have an aunt who just passed away at 101 years old, was my godmother and loved her to death. But the last 10 years of her life didn't do much because, she was super old. I should have captured those stories. I have stories that I remember, but I didn't capture them. So I'm a
Mm.
bad person. I regret it.
No, you're not a bad person. Many people don't. Many people don't. I've got one final question for you,
Sure.
Paul, and you've shared so much wisdom and advice. I wonder if you could speak to the people who are on this call as storytellers who have either purchased Remento for themselves, they have received Remento as a gift, or they're just on the Zoom call because they're interested in the science of storytelling. What advice would you have for them related to the documentation, the preservation, the capture of their stories?
Yeah. First of all, you're not going to be around forever. And as I said, I think everyone's life is interesting. If you think of that legacy question, I always think of titles. As you know, Charlie, I'm a very strategic thinker and published more than 200 scientific papers, peer-reviewed papers. I think a lot about the title. So if you're stuck, what's the title of your story? Give me a
Hmm.
title. Make it declarative, right? A sense, 8 words, 10 words, make a statement. What's your story about? Why are you here? So
Hmm.
what, as an example, when I was in graduate school, I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, I broke up with my girlfriend. I had to get a PhD. I don't know why. Literally, I mean, you know me, I'm pretty thin anyway. I lost 15 pounds my first year in graduate school. I was very thin. And I just said, I have to do this thing. I will sleep in my car. I don't know whatever I didn't, but whatever it would take, I would do it. I don't know why. And I still probably don't fully understand that. But to share that story, um, one of my kids in high school said, I just don't want to work as hard as you did in my career. So
Hmm.
what's my weird pathology that I felt like I had to get a PhD? That's worth exploring, right? And if I had the right prompts, I could probably figure that out for myself and then share that with my adult children.
Yeah.
But I think if I started with a title, why do I work 7 days a week? What's my major malfunction there? Well, I
Hmm.
love what I do. So if you love what you do, well, why do you love it? How'd that get there? How'd you find that out? When did you start loving it? Did you always love it? I mean, there's just so many good questions. So I'm sure you've used the 5 whys kind of approach, but the 5 whys is a great way to dig into that personal story.
Yeah. We use the 5 whys often when we think about building our product as well. So very, very sage advice. Dr. Zach, we have covered so much ground speaking about what makes a great story, the neurochemistry and biology behind how stories can bring us together. We have talked about how families can come together through the sharing of stories and ultimately why stories are so important to be shared. We are so grateful that you joined us today. Thank you so, so deeply for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Charlie.
Imagine there's a virtual applause, a deafening virtual applause through the room. We will transition to the next 2 parts of our agenda. We'll move right now into what is going to be a really exciting product announcement that we have to share. Before we get over into that area, I just want to remind you that very shortly we're going to be opening up our chat. If it's not open already, so you can go ahead and add any questions that you have about Remento, our product, how it works, how to give it as a gift, and be sure that you, before writing one yourself, look at some of the other questions and just add a little thumbs up, and we will prioritize the questions that we answer based on the numbers of thumbs up. So I would love to now go ahead and introduce what I think is a really, really exciting product update for Remento and for the future of all of our customers, which is that we now have an incredibly exciting partnership with a company called Legacy Box, which is the largest digitizer of photos in the United States. Dr. Zach talked a lot about the importance of photographs to being able to inspire great stories. And what we found is a lot of our customers have a lot of photographs, but they are printed in in physical form. And what our partnership with Legacy Box will allow our customers to be able to do is submit their photographs through a box that arrives at your door for digitization, and then to have those photos added directly into your Remento account. So we are super excited to be working with the largest digitizer in the country on this effort. We think it's going to add a lot of value to our customers. And then most importantly, it's going to be incredibly easy to use. Just drop your photos into the box that arrives at your doorstep, and we'll take care of the rest. So this partnership is going to be launching in the next couple of weeks. If you're interested and on this call right now, you can sign up for our wait list via the feedback survey that's going to be shared in just a couple of moments to be able to get early access to the feature. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn us over to our Q&A. And it looks like we have lots of questions in our webinar. As a reminder, you can simply add a thumbs up to the questions that you're most interested in hearing about. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first question from the audience. First question is from Cindy. Cindy, thank you for being here. Can we get a recording of this presentation? That's an easy one. The answer is definitely yes. We'll be sending out a recording at the very beginning of next week. It'll take us a little bit of time to process, but we'll make sure we get this recording to you. Thank you for asking. Can I correct my own story? Janie, thank you for writing in. The answer is definitely yes. So once you've recorded a story, there are two options. You can either keep the story or you can re-record it. So if you say something that you don't like, you can simply re-record the story. But if you want to keep the recording, you can simply log into your private website and make a change to the text that has been generated. So if you said 1984 and it was 1987, you can just change that number as it's printed in the book without having to re-record the story. So yes, the answer there is yes. Rita is writing in. This is awesome. Thank you so much, Rita. My dad speaks Spanish. Can this be done in Spanish? The answer is yes. Right now, Remento supports all of 2 languages. Lucky for you, the second language other than English is Spanish. So he can speak in Spanish. Remento will understand his words, and the speech-to-story technology will create a written story in Spanish. So yes, and for anyone who's wondering about other languages, that is on our list of priorities to be able to roll out in the coming months. So thank you for that question, Rita. What are the 5 whys? The 5 whys, Beth, were it's a framework that was coined originally by Toyota, actually, many years ago, and it's designed to try to isolate it's called a root cause analysis. It's to try to identify what is the underlying root cause of a problem or a concern. So if you walk outside and say you're cold, you ask yourself, why are you cold? You're cold because you're not wearing a jacket. Why are you not wearing a jacket? Because you forgot it in your car. Why did you forget it in your car? Because you lost your keys. Why did you lose your keys? Because you don't have a good place to put your keys. And you realize that the reason that you're cold is not because you don't have a jacket. It's because you don't have a good place for your keys. So it allows you to understand really what is at the root of the issue that you're facing. And I think in Paul's example, he was recommending using the 5 whys to really try to unpack what is the essence of maybe the legacy that you're interested in communicating. Hope that's helpful, Beth. I'm far from an expert on the 5 whys, but I think if you Google them or look at the Wikipedia, you should be able to get some more information. Ruth Ann, my older pictures are not on my computer. How do you suggest I incorporate them into my book? Well, Ruth Ann, we have our new partnership with Legacy Box. So that's going to be a really good way if you have a collection of old photographs like this, you'll be able to put the photographs into the box that'll be shipped to you. And those photos will be digitized and then mailed back to your address or a different address if you prefer. That would be probably the easiest way to be able to get photos into Remento. The other way that's really simple is you can just use your cell phone or your iPhone or Android device to just take a really simple photo of the picture, and then you can crop it, and then you can upload that photograph either as a prompt so that you speak to that photo, or you can add the photo after you've recorded the story to be a complement to the recording itself. And we've got some help center content on this that really explains how to do both of those things. So Ruth Ann, if you've got any questions about how to do that, you can just send us an email at support@remento.co and just let us know if you need any help, and we'd be happy to walk you through. How can I view all of the prompts? So Sharon, thank you for the question. All you have to do to view all of the prompts would be to log into Remento. So if you're a storyteller, you're going to be receiving every week a single prompt that's sent to you that's picked by either you, if you bought Remento for yourself, or a member of your family, if someone gifted it to you. If you want to be able to add prompts as someone who received Remento as a gift, all you have to do is log into Remento by going to the website, remento.co, and clicking login. And from there, you can see our full list of questions. And again, we have thousands of questions that you can pick from. And as a storyteller, no matter how you got Remento, you can customize the experience. So if you log into Remento and you see that there are 50 questions that have been added to the storytelling queue that you're not interested in, you can reorder those questions and argue with your family about which ones you'll answer. But again, as a storyteller, you always have the ability to customize your experience. Thank you for the question, Sharon. Luana asks, will there be an additional cost to your new feature? Yeah, there is a new cost. The specifics of that will be shared with all of our Remento customers in the coming weeks. The service that we use will have a cost associated with the digitization of those photographs, as well as shipping the box to you, then shipping the box back to Legacy Box, and then shipping your photos back to you again. So 3 legs of shipping. There's a flat fee for all of that content, the box, the digitization, and it's based on the number of photos that you're interested in digitizing, whether that's 25 or 50 or 100 or 1,000. So more to come on the pricing of that. Sharon's writing in, when do you anticipate being able to add more than 1 photos on a page? Sharon, this is our #1 requested feature. We're going to be working on that in the coming weeks. So I'm optimistic that we will have that within 2 months, but I don't have an exact date for you on that front. But I promise you, we will be very, very loud about that feature when it is made available, because again, it is one that we hear about all the time from our customers. So thank you for raising that. Pat is asking, the connection with family is super important. Can younger generations present questions to those sharing memories real time? So the answer is yes to both. Anyone who's invited as a collaborator to Remento is able to add questions into the queue. They can pick questions from the question bank. They can write questions of their own, or they can upload photos of their own. So in our family, my sister uploaded a bunch of photos. I picked a bunch of questions, and then her and I argued about which ones would be asked in which order. The good news is that you can record them in any order and then organize them once you actually go to print the book in whatever order makes the most sense for you. I think a lot of people are interested in chronological ordering, starting with earlier in life and moving through life, but that's not the order that they have to be recorded in. And then, Pat, your second question is real time. The way that folks who are interested in real time conversation are able to do that most effectively is simply by sitting with their family member and holding the phone or putting the phone on a table in a place where they can talk about the prompt at hand and just record that experience. So that would be the way that we can accommodate real time. Thank you for the question, Pat. Karen, is there a way that the storyteller can see all of her or his upcoming prompts? Yes, definitely, Karen. All they have to do is log into Remento, which is going to the website, clicking log in. They'll log in through the website, and they'll be able to see all of the prompts. Importantly, Remento doesn't require any logins or passwords or downloads to record. So for the storyteller who simply wants to record their stories, no logins, but to be able to view all of those prompts, to see upcoming prompts, there is a login necessary to be able to enter into that private area. Thank you for the question, Karen. When recording, I get emotional. I need to stop to compose myself. If I push pause, I can't go back to the story. It wants to end the story. I don't want to record. Susan, I totally understand. And pausing is a really important part of that. Right now, you should be able to unpause your recording. I'll have our team look into this and get back to you, but the way that our recording experience is designed is to be able to press pause, and then there is a resume button that should allow you to resume the recording without having to restart. But Susan, our team will be in touch with you in the next day to check in to see why maybe you're having issues with that, because that's not the way it's supposed to actually operate. We're going to continue going with these questions. What I do want to share, though, is that we do have a feedback survey, which I would love to ask one of my colleagues to pin to the chat in the next minute. We would love feedback about how this webinar was for you, where you thought it was valuable, where we can improve, the areas that you'd like us to explore in the future. So my colleague is going to pin that in the chat very shortly. And if you could just take a minute to fill out that survey, we would really appreciate that. Thank you, Susan, for this great question. Sharon is asking, can I tell a story without a prompt? Can I tell a story without a prompt? The answer is yes. You just need to create your own prompt. So technically, every spoken story needs to have a prompt, but you can write whatever prompt you want. You would just, when you start to record, press pick a different prompt. You can add a custom prompt, and if you wanted to make the prompt no prompt, the word no prompt, or whatever you wanted, you could just tell whatever story you would like. So you need a prompt to have a story recorded, but you can customize whatever that prompt says. John is writing, can you extend your gifted subscription beyond the first year? The answer is yes, absolutely. So when we sell Remento, we sell it for $99, and it includes 1 year of use for the product, which includes as much storytelling as you'd like in that period of time, as well as a credit for a hardcover color printed keepsake book. We have a lot of storytellers, many storytellers who realize that a year isn't enough. They've lived amazing lives and they want more than a year to be able to tell that story. You can renew your subscription for an extra year for $99, or I think monthly for $12 per month, whichever feels better for you. And for as long as your subscription is active, you can continue sharing new stories. And if at any point you decide after having renewed your subscription you'd like to cancel, we make that really easy as well, and you won't be billed again. Thank you, John. Great question there. Karen is writing in, could I make a collage of pictures that I have and just screenshot it to submit it as one picture? Karen, that's brilliant. That's exactly what some of our customers do. It's a great way to accommodate adding multiple photos into the book in advance of us rolling out the capacity to add multiple photos. So Karen, it's a great idea. And for anyone who's on this call thinking about multiple photos, that is exactly the way that we would recommend you going about doing that. Thank you, Karen. Really good question. Ginger's asking, this is a tough question, but what happens to Remento in 50 years? Technology changes. What happens with QR codes and the books in years to come? Any thoughts on this? Don't expect you to know the future, but curious. Yeah, Ginger, I have to adjust myself so that you can actually see my face. Ginger, this is a really important question. And frankly, it's one that we think about all the time. If you go back 50 years, the number of companies that have been around for since that period of time is small. And frankly, the content that you're recording on Remento is far too important to bet on the longevity of our company. Although for the record, I fully intend to be running this company well beyond 50 years. That's why we allow you to download every single piece of content that is created or uploaded within Remento directly to your device. So if after every single recording, you would like to download that video, that audio file, those words directly to your device, and then save them to your own Google Drive account, your own iCloud account, wherever you'd like, you're able to do that. And that's at no cost to you. And we will make that content available for as long as we are able to. So Ginger, it's a tough question, but it's one of the most important questions that we can answer. Thank you for that question. Beth is asking, I get my prompts via email. Can I get texts instead or in addition to the emails? The answer, Beth, is if you live in the United States, the answer is yes. We're currently exploring providers that will allow us to send text messages outside of the United States at an affordable price for us. But yes, all you have to do is go into your settings page and add your phone number and then make sure that you are signed up for text messages in your settings. That would have probably been an option for for when you actually purchased the product or when someone purchased it for you, but you can add that in the notifications section of change that in the notifications and settings section of your Remento account. And if you have any questions, our support team is going to be happy to share that instruction directly with you. Next question. Can you put short videos in? At this point, Elizabeth, you can't upload videos to Remento. Right now, it's got to be recorded on our site to be able to be uploaded. That's the only way that we're able to use the speech-to-story technology to synthesize the video that was shared. Thank you for that question. Hi, Mary. You came in late. Is there a link to hear the earlier talk? Yes, we'll be sending a link to the recording to all participants, all people who registered to the recording probably next week. So yes, you'll definitely get that. Thank you, Mary. Linda's asking, how do I use Remento to help someone non-family capture their stories like a business? There are a lot of different ways that we can do that, Linda. If you've got a specific area that you're interested in, why don't you reach out to our support team and we can have a conversation about the right way to support you. We work with a lot of companies, different types of organizations to be able to accommodate their unique needs. So why don't you reach out to us and we can have a conversation about that. I'm going to answer the next question in just a moment, but just as a reminder, we are at time right now. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We'll spend the next 10 minutes going through some additional questions. But if everyone, before you leave, could please take just a couple of minutes to fill out the feedback survey, which is pinned to our chat. We would really, really appreciate that. Just a couple of minutes to let us know, how did this go? Where can we be better? What are the areas you'd like to see us cover in the future? It would really mean the world to us. So thank you so much for that. Our next question, how long does it take before the book is ready? And can the period be shortened? The answer is absolutely. We've had people create their entire books within the span of a single week. So at this point, you can customize how many prompts you want to receive in a week. You can pick one prompt a week. You could have a prompt show up every day, which means that in the span of just a couple of weeks, you could be well over 50 prompts, probably close to 100 prompts in a fairly short amount of time. You can also record multiple prompts in a day by recording them on demand. And we've had customers who are facing a difficult diagnosis who want to move more quickly with a project like this. We find that one prompt a week allows people, most storytellers who are not in a rush, a chance to enjoy the experience and be reflective and think about the answers they want to give. But for people who want to move more quickly, we certainly make that available. Thank you, Gilchrist. Tammy asks, is there any way to print the stories so my dad can edit them in a written form? I have been taking screenshots and pasting them into Google Doc, but that's a pain. That does sound like a pain. The answer is there's not currently an easy way to do that. You should be able to copy and paste, and it sounds like you've been, it sounds like you're taking screenshots. I think you should be able to copy and paste the text. But it definitely sounds like a pain. And that is a really good piece of feedback that I'll share with my product team and see if there's a way that we can better accommodate that. It's a really important question. Thank you for flagging that. Patrick asked, do you use AI or some other technology to edit and smooth the transcription? We do. Our speech-to-story technology is AI powered, and the AI is specifically taking the recording. And for the cleaned transcript version, it is removing all of the filler words that you would not actually want to have printed in a book, all of the ums and ahs. And then for our first person and third person versions, we are restructuring the recording so that it exists as a structured story with a clear beginning, middle, and end. So the answer, Patrick, to your question is yes. Kevin is asking, is it better to create a start to finish narrative of your story, or is it more adequate than contagious, or to just create bits and pieces as they enter your mind as separate stories and connect them later? Kevin, I'll share with you, we don't care. It's up to you. It totally depends on how you want to structure your story. What I can tell you is that for some of our customers, they really want to be methodical and try to cover their entire lived experience from beginning to end, starting with the beginning and moving through, really capturing all the best moments. And for other family members, what they're interested in doing is really capturing vignettes of moments that have made them the person they are. And ultimately, I don't think either perspective, either approach is better or worse. They're just different. And ultimately, what's going to matter most to your family is that the content that you have created will be available to them. So I would say, Kevin, it totally depends on your prerogative and how you think that using our product would best serve your intention. So it's a great question. Thanks, Kevin. Robert says, I was gifted Remento at the end of December, but I won't be able to start this until sometime this summer. Can my subscription start when I actually begin using it? Robert, feel free to reach out to our customer support team, support@remento.co, and we can take a look at your case specifically. Beth is asking, what is the most number of pages you can put into a book? So when you buy Remento for the $99 price tag, that includes a book that is up to 200 pages long. And if you want to print a book that is between 201 and 380 pages, there is a $30 surcharge to do that, which covers our costs of extra pages and printing. So books can be printed up to 380 pages. Pretty rarely do we have books that are printed above 380 pages, but for those books, we just invite our families to split them between a volume 1 and a volume 2. Thanks for the question, Beth. Marty is asking, in addition to Legacy Box, can Remento integrate with other services like Scan Cafe? Marty, that's a great question. Maybe you can send us a note and let us know what you have in mind here. We're not currently integrating with any other providers, not integrated with Scan Cafe. But if that is of interest to you, let us know. I'd be really curious to learn more about what you have in mind. Again, support@remento.co. We'd love to learn more about what you think the use case is there. Ray is the first person with a photo. Nicely done, Ray. Basic pricing framework. So Remento costs $99, which includes 1 year of sharing stories and a credit for a hardcover color printed book. That book can be redeemed at any point in the future. And is it printed up to 200 pages. For an extra $30, you can print up to 380 pages. You also have the option to add on an ebook to that purchase as well. We have a add-on that we were really excited to share today, which is the Legacy Box digitization service, which will be available. The pricing of that will be available on our website as it's rolled out. And then for anyone who believes after a year they want to continue telling stories, they can just renew their subscription for a subsequent either month or year for $12 per month or $99 for the year. Sharon is asking, do you print the story exactly the way it was recorded? Generally speaking, the answer is no. There are 3 different versions, Sharon. The first is our cleaned transcript, which will print out basically the words that were spoken, but will remove the filler words that you wouldn't want to have printed in a book. Then we have a speech-to-story version that will take the recording and restructure it as text in either the first person, written as if you were talking about yourself, I went to the grocery store, or the third person, Charlie went to the grocery store. So those are the 3 options. If you're looking for an exact transcript, the closest thing would be the cleaned transcript that we offer, which is very close to exactly what was said with just some of those filler words changed. I think that's Al is writing, will this Q&A be included in the recording of the presentation? It certainly will. Yes, the entire thing will be included. I will be happy to. Absolutely. Thanks for that question. Tammy's writing, my dad often gets off topic and the information he shares gets eliminated by AI. Is there a way for Remento to add that information in? I've been doing it manually. Tammy, that's great feedback. I think one of the things that our storytellers and hosts have told us is that for longer winded storytellers, there's an ability to change the length of the story as it's processed. And for someone who's longer winded, you can adjust it to be a longer a longer written story, and that should allow more of those details to be included. We're also in the next month going to be making some changes to the way that we've developed our speech to story that will change the length of the story that gets processed based much more dynamically based off of the way the length of the story that's recorded. So Tammy, you can definitely make the adjustment to make it longer, but I think some of the issue that you're experiencing may be partially resolved with this new update. So please follow up with us maybe in the next week or so if you're not feeling that that's solving your issue. And if it's not, I'll be happy to take that back to the product team. Thank you, Tammy. Kelly is asking, one can buy Remento for oneself to write his or her stories for the family. The answer is yes. You can either buy Remento as a gift for someone, or you can buy it for yourself. And when you buy it for yourself, you get to control the entire process. You can also invite your family to be a part of the experience and receive your prompts on a weekly basis, as well as help pick what prompts they want to hear. So yes. Celia is asking, how long can one story be? We are able to record up to 30 minutes in length. So 30 minutes is the max amount of time. And the only reason for that is because after we record more than 30 minutes, the likelihood of your phone not being able to send us the content increases. So we found that a 30-minute time length is the right amount for us. If ever you want to share more than you have time to record, you can always break it into a part 1 and a part 2. And that's what some of our storytellers do. Kelly is asking, how many maximum prompts allowed in 1-year subscription? There is no maximum. We've had customers who have hundreds of prompts per year. For the price that you pay with Remento, you have as many prompts as you would like to share with your storyteller, or if you are the storyteller with yourself, no maximum there. Thanks, Kelly. Do you print the story exactly the way it was recorded? Sharon, the answer is no. We allow you to switch between either that clean transcript or one of the two speech to story options, as I was mentioning earlier. Catherine is asking, can more than one person tell the story? Would like to write story of my mother who passed away, but do it with my sister. The answer is yes, you can do that. You certainly can. Remento doesn't work particularly well if you have multiple people speaking at the same time. But you can certainly have one person speaking at a time who is different than your mother. We've had some people use our product to collect commemorations, memorials of someone who's passed away in the past. I would say our product doesn't work perfectly for that. There are definitely some things for us to work on, but it's certainly plausible to be able to do that, and our technology does support it. Thank you for the question. Sharon is asking, how big can a book be and be manageable to view? Our books can be printed up to 380 pages. That's the max printing size, and that would be as big as our books can be as printed. Sandra is asking, how many stories can I record? How many prompts? Sandra, there is no limit to the number of stories you can record. You can record as many stories within 1 year as you'd like. And if after a year you want to record more, all you have to do is extend for either another month or for another full year. Great question. Kevin is asking, is it better to create a start to finish narrative of your story or more adequate? Okay, I think, Kevin, I think we did answer this question already. So I think we can move on to the next one. If this question, if you didn't feel like we answered this question sufficiently, we're happy to provide more feedback through our customer support channel. So we can move on to the next one. And Christopher is asking, have you had a significant number of Remento users personally remark that changes made by AI seriously reduce the personality of the storyteller too much? We haven't had a significant number of Remento users remark on that. In fact, I would say the feedback that we get more often is that the speech to story technology helps structure someone's perspective and feed and recording in a way that they might not have felt confident to do themselves. But Christopher, if this is something that you have experienced in your family, we would love to talk with you to learn more about exactly what you've experienced. Definitely trying to make the product better at all times. So if this is something that you are experiencing, please do reach out to us. We would love to be in touch. And I think this will be our last question that we have time for today. Catherine is writing, my sister and I would like to write our mother's story. She has passed away. Is it possible for us to share prompts and write them in the third person? The answer is yes, similar to what we were saying earlier, if you'd like to. It's not the way the product is designed, but if you do want to speak basically on your mother's behalf, which is the way it would feel as you're recording these stories, that is possible. It's plausible. And you can go ahead and do that. And if you have any questions or concerns, please do let us know. We would be more than happy to work with you to make sure that you're able to accommodate that really important use case. So with that, we have reached the end of our webinar today. I want to say thank you so much for everyone who has taken the time to join us. Just as a reminder, if you could please take just 2 minutes to fill out the feedback survey that is pinned to the top of the chat, you'll have a chance to win one of 3 free book credits that we are going to be giving away as a thank you for people who submit our feedback survey. So please take a moment to fill in that feedback survey. We created this company in the first place because we believe that sharing and preserving stories is really important. And there is nothing that is more fun than having a chance to speak with our storytellers and learn that the stories that they've recorded on our platform have made a difference both in their lives and also in their families' lives. It's really heartening to hear feedback like my kids see their grandparents in a new light because of Remento. And the opportunity to bring families together is one that we really don't take for granted. So I want to share a huge thanks to Dr. Paul Zak, who joined us at the beginning of this call. What an expert, what an amazing scientist and amazing perspective that he brought to the call. And thank you to all of you who have joined our call, who asked questions and are either current Remento customers or interested in becoming one. Again, I'm Charlie Greene. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Remento. And on behalf of our entire team, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Take care, everyone.